My wife laughed. You can have my husband. Her best friend answered, happily. She meant every word. The night my marriage died, my wife laughed, offered me to a table of friends like a free giveaway. But it wasn't her cruel joke that broke me. It was what her best friend said next, a single sentence that revealed a betrayal so deep it unraveled everything I thought I knew. My name's Mitchell, I'm 34, and I've always been the steady type. I'm a project manager in commercial construction. My days are spent coordinating, arguing with inspectors, making sure buildings go up safely. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it. I show up. I'm reliable. That's always been my brand, honestly. Reliable Mitchell, the guy who remembers the dry cleaning and never forgets a birthday. Jenna, my wife, was a complete opposite. She's in pharmaceutical sales. And she's incredible. She walks into a room and owns it. Funny, sharp, charismatic. She makes everyone feel like they're part of something exciting. When we first started dating 6 years ago, I loved that. I was the quiet guy who built things. She was a spark. We just made sense. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being her partner and started being her material. It was subtle at first, little jokes at parties. Mitchell's idea of a wild Friday night is reorganized in the garage. Everyone would laugh. I'd laugh too, because it was kind of true and I wasn't insecure about it. Then the jokes got sharper. Mitchell cried during a dog food commercial last week. I had to comfort him like a toddler. That one stung. I'd told her that story in bed in the dark because I thought it was a safe place. I'd actually gotten emotional watching an old man reunite with his dog. She told it at brunch. Our friend group was really Jenna's friend group. 3 other couples. We did dinners, game nights, lake weekends. On paper, it looked like this amazing social life. In practice, it felt like a performance. Everyone was competing to be the funniest, the most entertaining. And eventually, without anyone voting, I became the group's designated punching bag. Not cruel, I told myself. It was always wrapped in affection. Oh, Mitchell, you sweet, boring man. Classic Mitchell. What would we do without our Mitchell? It was like I was the group's golden retriever. Loyal, a little dumb, happy to be included. Jenna loved it. She'd pile on, telling stories about me that were half true and fully humiliating. Everyone would howl, and she'd glow. I could see it. Being the funniest person at the table, that was her drug. I tried talking to her about it twice. The first time, she said I was being too sensitive, that everyone makes fun of their spouse. The second time, she cried and said I was trying to control her personality. After that, I stopped bringing it up. I just carried it. We'd been in couples therapy for about 4 months when the dinner happened. Dr. Kaplan, nice woman. Office smelled like lavender and quiet disappointment. Jenna had agreed to go because I said it was important to me, and she wanted credit for being the kind of wife who goes to therapy. The sessions were surface level. Jenna performed being open, just like she performed everything else. I sat there wondering if Dr. Kaplan saw through it, or if Jenna was just that good. Anyway, the dinner. It was at the Patterson's house, one of those perfectly manicured subdivisions where every lawn looks trimmed with a ruler. 8 of us around a big farm table. Wine flowing. Jenna was on. I mean really on. 2 glasses of Pinot Deep, holding court, making everyone laugh. I was having a fine time. Actually, Todd and I were talking about a retaining wall he wanted to build, which is literally my idea of a great conversation. For about 20 minutes, I forgot to be on guard. Then Jenna's voice cut across the table. Okay, I have an announcement. She tapped her wine glass like she was giving a toast. Everyone turned. If anyone wants a free husband, take him. She gestured at me with her glass. Seriously, he comes with a toolbox and a very sad fantasy football record. No returns. The table erupted. Bree snorted wine. Greg Patterson did this fake, thoughtful chin stroke. What's the warranty situation? More laughter. I smiled. I always smile. I've gotten very good at smiling while something inside me quietly closes a door. I mean it, Jenna continued, leaning back. Sometimes I think Mitchell married the wrong woman. He needs someone who gets excited about spreadsheets and lawn care and dog food commercials. Bree added. Everyone laughed again. I felt my jaw tighten. That was mine. That was something I'd shared privately. And now it was a running joke that lived outside our house. I looked at Jenna, and she was beaming, completely unaware that she just used my vulnerability as a party trick. Again, that's when Danny spoke. Danielle, Jenna's best friend since college, divorced, sharp, an interior designer. She was at the end of the table, swirling her wine, and she'd been quieter than usual all night. I'd noticed, but hadn't thought much of it. Gladly, Danny said. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. He's the only good man here. The table went dead silent. Jenna's smile froze. Greg looked at his wife. Todd suddenly found his napkin fascinating. Bree let out this nervous, dying half-laugh. Danny didn't flinch. She looked right at Jenna. You just offered your husband to a table full of people like he's a leftover casserole. And everyone laughed. And he smiled because he always smiles when you do this. So, yeah, gladly. Because at least I'd have the decency to appreciate him. 8 seconds of silence. I counted. Jenna recovered first. Because Jenna always recovers first. Wow, Danny dramatic much? It's a joke. I know, Danny said. That's the problem. And just like that, something cracked. Not exploded. Cracked. Like a windshield that takes a rock and holds. Together until the next bump in the road. Shows you the fracture lines everywhere. I sat there with my lukewarm beer and realized something that should have been obvious years ago. A stranger had just offended my dignity at a dinner table. And my own wife's first instinct was to call her dramatic for doing it. Jenna changed the subject. The night moved on. People laughed at other things. But I could feel it underneath, this tension that hadn't been there before. Danny left early. Jenna barely said goodbye. On the drive home, Jenna was quiet for about 6 minutes. Then she said Danny was totally out of line. I didn't respond. She made it weird. Jenna insisted. Everyone was having fun. Were they? I said. Jenna looked at me. Are you seriously taking her side? I didn't answer that either. I just drove. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying it. I was thinking about it. Really thinking about it. Because here's the thing that kept me up that night, long after Jenna fell asleep. Danny said what she said like it had been building. Like she'd been watching something for a while, and finally couldn't keep quiet. And the way she looked at Jenna wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was disappointment. I needed to talk to Danny. Not about whatever Jenna would assume. Not about anything romantic. I needed to know what she'd been seeing that I'd been too close to notice. I had no idea how much she was going to tell me. The next few days were strange. Jenna acted like the dinner never happened, which was her go-to move whenever something uncomfortable surfaced. She had this incredible ability to just seal over an awkward moment like it was a crack in drywall. Smooth it out, paint over it, pretend the foundation wasn't shifting underneath. She texted Danny twice that I saw. The first one said, "Hey, you okay? You seemed off the other night." Which, if you didn't know the context, would sound caring. But I knew Jenna's playbook. That text was a test. She was checking whether Danny was going to apologize. When Danny replied with something short, Jenna sent a second message. "I think we should talk. I don't want things to be weird between us." Translation: I need you to admit you overreacted so I can feel justified again. Danny didn't respond to the second one. I waited 3 days. Then I texted Danny myself. Simple. "Hey, can I buy you a coffee? I want to talk about the other night." She wrote back in about 30 seconds. "Yes, Thursday, groundswell on Birch Street. 2 o'clock. That Thursday, I told my site foreman I had a doctor's appointment and drove across town. Groundswell was one of those places with exposed brick and oat milk options that would have made me roll my eyes 5 years ago. But I secretly kind of like now." Danny was already there, sitting in a corner booth with black coffee and a look on her face that said she'd been expecting this conversation. I sat down. She studied me for a second. "You look tired," she said. "I am tired." She nodded, not sympathetically, just acknowledging it. Danny doesn't do fake sympathy. It's probably why she and Jenna were friends in the first place. An opposites attract thing. "I'm sorry if I made things awkward for you," she said about the dinner. "I know that probably created problems." "It didn't create problems, Danny. It described them." She set down her coffee. How long have you known? Known what? That she doesn't respect you. Nobody had ever said it that directly to me. I'd thought it late at night in the shower during long drives. I'd circled around the word respect in therapy without ever landing on it. But hearing someone else say it out loud, someone who'd watched my marriage from the outside for years, it hit different. I keep hoping she'll hear herself, I said. Danny was quiet for a long moment. She turned her coffee cup slowly on the table. I could see her making a decision. Mitchell, I need to tell you something, and you're going to be upset. And I understand if you're upset with me, too, because I should have told you sooner. My first thought was that she was about to tell me Jenna was having an affair. That's where your mind goes, right? But it wasn't that. It was, in some ways, worse. There's a group chat, Danny said. Jenna, Bree, Leah Patterson, and Kesha Okafor Klein. It's been going for about 1.5 years. They call it the Mitchell Files. I didn't say anything. I just sat there and let the name settle. It started as just the usual venting, Danny said. Husband complaints, marriage stuff. But Jenna turned it into something else. She started sharing things, private things, stories about your arguments, things you said in therapy. Therapy? Dr. Kaplan gives you both homework, right? Reflection exercises, communication worksheets, that kind of thing. I nodded. We had a shared folder on Jenna's laptop where we kept the worksheets. She screenshots them and sends them to the group. Your answers, the ones where you write about your feelings, your fears, what you want from the marriage. Danny's voice was steady, but her eyes were not, and they make fun of them. The coffee shop was playing some acoustic cover of a song I couldn't identify. The espresso machine was hissing. A barista dropped a metal pitcher that clanged against the counter. I heard all of it in this hyper-clear way that happens when your brain is trying to process something it can't quite accept. They make fun of them, I repeated. Not all the time. Sometimes they're sympathetic. Bree will say something like, "Ah, poor Mitchell," with a crying, laughing emoji. Leah usually just reacts with the skull emoji. But Jenna is the one who frames it. She'll send a screenshot of your therapy worksheet and write something like, "He actually wrote this with a straight face." Or, "Tell me this man isn't a golden retriever in human form." I sat back, my hands flat on the table. I remember looking at them and thinking they looked like someone else's hands. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, because the other night, she offered you up like you were nothing, and everyone laughed. And I looked around that table and realized I was the only person who was disgusted. And I thought, if I don't tell him, who will? She paused. I should have told you months ago. I know that. You were in the chat? Yes. Jenna added me when it started. I never replied to any of the Mitchell stuff. I muted it after the first few weeks, but I stayed in because I kept thinking it would die out, and I didn't want to make things weird by leaving. She looked down. That's not a good enough reason. I know. I wasn't angry at Danny. I tried to be for about 15 seconds, because it would have been easier than what I was actually feeling. But she was sitting across from me telling me a truth that cost her a friendship, and that counted for something. "There's more," she said. Of course there was. About 2 months ago, Jenna found something on your laptop. I think she called it a journal or a notes file. Personal stuff. Stuff you wrote for yourself. My throat tightened. I knew exactly what she meant. I'd started keeping a private document in my notes app. Not a journal. Exactly. More like a place where I worked through things I couldn't say out loud. How I felt about the marriage. How I felt about being the punchline. Whether I still loved Jenna or just loved the idea of the marriage working. I'd written things in there I'd never told anyone, including Dr. Kaplan. She shared parts of it in the chat. Danny said quietly, I closed my eyes. Behind my eyelids, everything was red and hot and loud, but I sat still. I'm good at sitting still. How much did she share? Enough. There were screenshots. Multiple. Bree said something like, "This is better than a podcast." And Jenna sent a laughing emoji. I opened my eyes. Danny looked like she wanted to crawl out of her own skin. "Do you still have access to the chat?" I asked. "Yes." "Can you screenshot everything?" "All of it. From the beginning." She nodded slowly. "I was hoping you'd ask that. I started saving things a few weeks ago. after the therapy worksheets. I took a breath, then another, then I picked up my coffee and drank it, even though it was cold and tasted like burnt cardboard. "Mitchell, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I said, and that was true. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a speech prepared or a dramatic exit strategy. I just had this feeling, very quiet and very certain, that the person I'd married had been performing a version of loving me while simultaneously turning my inner life into entertainment for her friends. That's not something you fix with a therapy worksheet. On the drive home, I pulled over at a gas station and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but it didn't come. Instead, I just thought about all the times I'd sat across from Dr. Kaplan and written honest answers on those worksheets. How I thought that was brave. How I thought Jenna and I were building something. She was copy-pasting my honesty into a group chat with a laughing emoji. I pulled back onto the road and drove home. Jenna was making stir-fry when I walked in. She smiled at me and asked how my day was. "Oh, you know," I said, "steady." She laughed. Classic Mitchell. I ate dinner. I washed the dishes. I sat on the couch while she watched her show. And somewhere between loading the dishwasher and brushing my teeth, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed and knew exactly what I wanted. Because for the first time in 6 years, I was going to stop being reliable, steady, easy to laugh at Mitchell, and start being the version of myself who actually made a plan. The next morning, I looked up divorce attorneys on my lunch break. And that night, Danny sent me a text. Just a link to a shared drive folder. I opened it and saw 472 screenshots organized by date. For 72, I didn't open a single one that night. I just stared at the number and thought, that's how many times my wife turned me into a joke while I was in the other room trying to be a good husband. Then I closed my phone and went to bed. I spent the next 2 weeks acting completely normal. Same routine, same Mitchell. Made breakfast on Saturdays, fixed the dripping faucet in the guest bath, went to therapy with Jenna, and filled out my worksheets with honest answers. Because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. Or maybe because I wanted to see if she'd keep sharing them. She did. Danny confirmed it the same day as our Thursday session. Jenna screenshotted my worksheet about identifying emotional needs in a relationship and sent it to the group with the caption, "Someone get this man a diary and a hug." Bree responded with 3 crying, laughing emojis. Leah sent a heart. Kesha wrote, "He's so precious it hurts." I read that on my lunch break, sitting in my truck outside a job site in Crescent Heights. Then I ate my sandwich and went back to work. I was getting very good at compartmentalizing. The attorney I found was named Sharon Voss, mid-50s, small firm, came highly recommended by a coworker who'd gone through a rough divorce 2 years back. She had an office that smelled like coffee and printer toner, and she got right to business. "Tell me the situation," she said. So I told her all of it. The jokes, the dinner, the group chat, the therapy, worksheets, the journal. She listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Do you want to save this marriage, or do you want to leave it cleanly?" "Leave it cleanly." Then we prepare. No dramatic moves. We document everything. Separate what we can and file when you're ready. The group chat material is useful for establishing a pattern. But I want you to understand something. This isn't a court case where we're proving she's a bad person. This is a divorce. We just need to make sure you walk out of it whole. I like Sharon. She laid out practical steps. No drama. No promises of devastating legal revenge. Over the next few weeks, I quietly shifted more of my direct deposit into my personal account, pulled together documentation on the house, including proof that my down payment came from pre-marriage savings, and made copies of everything important: tax returns, mortgage statements, insurance policies. I stored it all on a flash drive I kept in my work truck. Boring stuff, the kind of stuff that wins divorces. Then I started reading the Mitchell files. I'd been putting it off. Danny had sent me the folder, and I'd been carrying it around like a grenade with the pin still in. But one night, while Jenna was at a work dinner, I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and started from the beginning. The chat was worse than I'd imagined, and I'd imagined quite a bit. It wasn't wall-to-wall cruelty. That's the thing that made it harder to process. There were stretches of normal conversation, recipe links, complaints about bosses, photos of kids and dogs. And then, woven through it all, like a thread you couldn't unsee once you found it, were the Mitchell segments. Jenna would drop something in, and the others would riff on it. My cooking, my clothes, the way I said, "I love you," before bed every single night like a reflex. Jenna described it as robotic once, and Bree said, "At least he says it. Mine just grunts." That was one of the Kinder exchanges. The therapy material was the worst, not because the comments were especially vicious, but because the material was so personal. I'd written about feeling invisible in my own marriage. I'd written about wanting Jenna to look at me the way she looked at her friends, with genuine interest. I'd written about being afraid that I was boring, and that my wife had settled for me. Jenna sent that one with the caption, "LOL, he's not wrong." Bree replied, cold. Jenna replied, "I'm kidding, mostly." The journal entries were later in the timeline. Jenna had found my notes file and apparently read the whole thing. She excerpted the parts she found funniest, which happened to be the parts where I was most vulnerable. There was one entry where I'd written about a dream I'd had where Jenna introduced me to a stranger at a party and said, "This is my husband. He's not really anything special, but he's reliable." I'd written about waking up and realizing the dream wasn't exaggerated. Jenna shared that one and wrote, "Living with a poet over here." I closed the laptop after about 90 minutes. I'd gotten through maybe a third of the screenshots. I went outside and stood in the backyard and looked at the sky until my breathing evened out. Here's what nobody tells you about this kind of betrayal. It doesn't make you want to scream. It makes you want to disappear. Because the person who was supposed to be your safe place had been taking the most honest parts of you and passing them around a table for entertainment. And she'd been doing it while smiling at you over dinner and asking how your day was. I went back inside and kept reading. By the time I finished, two things were clear. First, Danny had told the truth. She'd never once commented on or reacted to any of the Mitchell material. Her messages in the chat were limited to design questions, restaurant recommendations, and one string of messages about a birthday party for Kesha's kid. She was in the chat, but she wasn't part of it, not the Mitchell part. Second, and this is the one that really sat with me, Jenna's parents came up multiple times. Specifically, Jenna complained about them. Her parents, Linda and Frank, are wonderful people. They adore me. Linda calls me every Sunday to check in, and Frank and I spent an entire Thanksgiving weekend rebuilding their back deck together. They're the kind of in-laws you feel lucky to have. Jenna's complaints in the chat were about them being too attached to me. "My mom literally likes Mitchell more than she likes me," she wrote once. "Dad asked for Mitchell's opinion on refinancing before he asked mine. I'm their actual daughter." Bree responded with, "Parents always love the spouse more. It's a thing." And Jenna sent a rage emoji. That gave me an idea. Not a scheme, not a trap, just a realization about where the truth would hit the hardest. Meanwhile, life continued. Jenna and I went to therapy. We had dinners. She planned a girls' weekend with the friend group. She was in an unusually good mood. Actually, she told me one night that she felt like things between us were getting back on track, and that the therapy was really working. "I feel like we're communicating better," she said, curled up on the couch. "Don't you think?" "Yeah," I said. "I think we're both being really honest." She smiled. She had no idea what I meant. The dinner party circuit resumed. We went to Bree and Todd's place for a barbecue. The dynamic was the same. The jokes, the stories, everyone laughing at Mitchell routine. But this time, I watched differently. I saw Bree glance at her phone after Jenna told a story about me spending 40 minutes researching the best brand of dish soap. I saw Leah smirk at Kesha. I saw the choreography. And I saw Danny sitting at the edge of the patio with a glass of water, watching me watch them. She gave me the smallest nod. Nobody at that barbecue knew anything had changed. Jenna told me on the drive home that it was the best night they'd had in months. "See," she said, "this is what it's supposed to be. Like, everyone relaxed, everyone having fun." "Yeah," I said, "everyone looked really comfortable." That weekend, Jenna left for the girls' trip. 3 days at a resort upstate. She kissed me on the forehead before she left and said, Don't burn the house down. No promises, I said. She laughed and drove away. I stood in the driveway and watched her car turn the corner. Then I went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and called Danny. I need a favor, I said. Can you organize the screenshots chronologically? I want the therapy worksheets in one folder, the journal entries in another, and the general comments in a third. Already done, she said. I figured you'd ask. I'll send the updated link tonight. That night, I sat in the quiet house and went through everything one more time. Every screenshot, organized and dated. 472 moments where my wife chose entertainment over loyalty. I printed a selection. Not all of it, just the therapy worksheets, the journal entries, and the worst of the commentary. I put them in a manila envelope and set it on my desk. Then I called Sharon Voss and told her I was ready. One thing first, I said. I need to talk to someone before we file. Who? My mother-in-law. I want to be clear about why I went to Linda first. It wasn't revenge. Linda and Frank had been more of family to me than Jenna had been in years, and they deserved to hear from me before the divorce filing turned everything into a legal document. Also, I was scared not of Jenna, but of the possibility that she'd talk me out of it. Jenna, at her best, is magnetic. She can reframe anything. She could turn the group chat into just girl talk and my hurt into overreacting, and I'd be right back where I started. I needed someone else to know the truth before Jenna could edit it. I called Linda on a Tuesday morning. Jenna was at work. I said I needed to talk to her about something important and asked if I could come by the house. She said, of course. She put coffee on. Frank and Linda live about 40 minutes south in a neat little ranch house with a flag out front and flower beds that Linda maintains with military precision. Frank was at his fishing buddy's place. So it was just the two of us. She had coffee and those little butter cookies she always puts out when I visit. I almost lost it right there because this woman had been more consistently kind to me than my own wife, and I was about to break her heart. Linda, I said, Jenna and I are getting divorced. She set down her coffee cup very slowly. Is there someone else? Not in the way you mean. Nobody's having an affair. Then what happened? This is the part where I could have just told her, summarized it, softened it, given her the headline and spared her the details. But Linda is not a woman who wants to be managed. She spent 30 years as an office administrator for a school district. She likes facts. She likes paper. I put the manila envelope on the table. I need you to look at this, I said, and I'm sorry. She opened it. She went to the first few pages quickly, brow furrowed, then slowed down. By the fourth page, she'd stopped moving. Her eyes tracked back and forth across the screenshots. Her mouth set in a thin line I'd never seen before. She got to the therapy worksheets. My answers about feeling invisible, about wondering if my wife had settled for me. Then Jenna's captions. Del he's not wrong. To get this man a diary and a hug. Linda put the pages down and pressed her hands flat on the table. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. How long has this been going on? She asked. About 1.5 years that I know of. Who else is in this chat? Bree, Leah, and Kesha. Danny was added, but never participated in the parts about me. She's the one who told me about it. Linda picked up the pages again and read through a few more. She stopped on one where Jenna had complained about her parents liking Mitchell too much. She read that one twice. She wrote this about us. Yeah. Linda stood up. She walked to the kitchen window and stood there for a long time, looking out at the yard. I could see her reflection in the glass. She looked like someone rearranging everything she thought she knew. Mitchell, she said without turning around, I want you to know that whatever happens between you and Jenna, Frank and I will always consider you family. I mean that. I know you do. She turned around. Her face had settled into something I can only describe as resolved. Not angry, not devastated, just decided. When are you telling her? This week, before the papers are filed. Do you want us there? No. This needs to be between me and her. She nodded. I'm going to call Frank, and then I'm going to call my daughter. Not today, after you've talked to her. But she is going to hear from me. I drove home feeling simultaneously lighter and heavier. Lighter because the truth was out. Heavier because there was no taking it back. I told Jenna on Thursday night. She'd come home from work in a good mood, talking about hitting her quarterly sales target. She opened a bottle of Prosecco and poured 2 glasses, handing me one with a smile that in a different timeline might have made me want to stay. "We need to talk," I said. The smile dimmed, not disappeared, just dimmed like a lamp on a lower setting. "Okay, about what?" "I know about the Mitchell files." The glass didn't drop. Her expression went through 4 stages in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, calculation, and then something I hadn't expected. Irritation. "Danny told you," she said. Not a question. "Yes." I can't believe her. I literally cannot believe she did that. Jenna set her glass down hard enough that Prosecco sloshed onto the counter. That chat was private. It was a private space for us to vent, and she had no right to drag you into it. I let that hang in the air. She was mad at Danny, not at herself. Not even a flicker of guilt. Just anger that her private joke factory had been exposed. "Jenna," I said, "you share my therapy homework." "Oh my God, Mitchell. It's not like I sent your social security number." It was venting. Women vent to their friends. That's what we do. You share my journal entries. Things I wrote privately. Things I never showed you or anyone. I found them on your laptop. You left them open. So that makes it okay to screenshot them and send them to 4 people? She crossed her arms. "I didn't send everything. You're making this sound way worse than it was. It was a few messages here and there over, a year. It's not like I was running a campaign against you. 472 screenshots, Jenna." That landed. I could see her doing the math, trying to figure out whether I was bluffing, how much I'd actually seen, whether there was something specific she needed to get ahead of. "Okay," she said, shifting into the reasonable tone she used when managing a situation. "I hear you. Your feelings are hurt, and I'm sorry you saw things that upset you. But that chat was never meant to hurt you. It was just how we talk. They don't all call it the Mitchell files." She flinched, actually flinched. Maybe hearing the name out loud, spoken by the person it was about, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I want a divorce," I said. Now the color drained. "What? No, Mitchell. No, that's insane. You don't divorce someone over a group chat. I'm divorcing someone who took the most vulnerable things I've ever written and turned them into entertainment. I'm divorcing someone who offered me up as a giveaway at a dinner party and got mad at the one person who said it was wrong. I'm divorcing someone who made me feel crazy for being hurt while she was the one causing the hurt. Mitchell, please. We're in therapy. We're working on this. You were screenshotting the therapy and sending it to the group chat the same day. That's not working on it. Jenna, that's mining it." She started crying, not the performative kind she deployed before. This was real, messy, panicked. When Jenna performs emotion, she still looks composed. This was the machinery of her confidence breaking down. "I'll stop the chat. I'll delete it tonight. We can find a new therapist. Mitchell, please don't do this. It's already done. Sharon Voss is my attorney. You'll be hearing from her." Jenna stared at me. "You already have an attorney?" "Yes." "How long have you been planning this?" "Long enough." She wiped her face. The tears hadn't worked. The reasonable voice hadn't worked. What came next was the one I've been bracing for. "If you leave me, you're going to regret it. You'll be alone, Mitchell. You don't have friends. You have my friends. You have my life. Without me, you're just some guy who builds things and goes to bed early." I looked at her for a long moment, and what I felt wasn't anger or sadness. It was recognition, because she just told me exactly who she thought I was. And she was wrong. "I'll be at a hotel tonight," I said. "We can work out the details through the attorneys." I picked up the bag I'd packed that morning and put in the trunk before she got home. She watched me walk to the door with this expression that was half fury and half genuine bewilderment, like she couldn't understand how the punchline had grown legs, and walked out. I was halfway to the car when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. "Frank and I know. We love you. Call us tomorrow." I read it twice. Then I pulled out of the driveway and drove to the Holiday Inn on Route 9, where I checked into a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and had a painting of a sailboat bolted to the wall. I sat on the bed and ate vending machine crackers and felt, for the first time in years, like I could breathe all the way in. 2 hours later, my phone started lighting up. Jenna, then Bree, then Leah, then a number I didn't recognize. I turned it face down and went to sleep. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in what happens when the comfortable narrative falls apart. Jenna called me 14 times that first night. I didn't answer. She texted a rotation of apologies, threats, and bargaining that I could have set a clock to. I'm so sorry. Please come home. Then 20 minutes later, you're being completely unreasonable and everyone agrees. Then 40 minutes after that, I'll do whatever you want. Therapy, couples retreat, anything. Just talk to me. I texted back once. Please communicate through attorneys going forward. I'm not trying to be cruel. I just need space to handle this properly. She replied, this is so unfair. You won't even give me a chance to explain. I put my phone in the nightstand drawer and watched cable news until I fell asleep. The friend group detonated faster than I expected. Danny told me later what happened. Jenna called an emergency meeting, not a formal one. Just panic calls to Bree, Leah, and Kesha, try and coordinate their story. Except Jenna didn't know that I had the screenshots. She assumed Danny had paraphrased things, exaggerated, maybe showed me a few messages out of context. So Jenna's version was, Mitchell is overreacting about some harmless girl talk, and Danny is stirring the pot because she's jealous of our marriage. That story worked for about 48 hours. Then 2 things happened. First, Bree's husband Todd found out. Not from me. Bree told him. Mitchell knows about the group chat, while minimizing what it contained. Todd asked to see it. Bree showed him a curated selection. Todd asked to see the rest. Bree said it was deleted. Todd, who works in IT, pointed out that deleted chats still show up in cloud backups. Bree panicked and showed him everything. Todd called me the next day. Mitchell, I had no idea. I'm not going to pretend I should have noticed, but I'm sorry. Appreciate it, Todd. Bree feels terrible. Bree participated for a year and a half. Silence. Then, yeah, I know. The second thing that happened was Linda. True to her word, she called Jenna after I confirmed I'd had the conversation. I don't know the details of that call. What I know is that Jenna showed up at her parents' house expecting sympathy, and instead got Frank sitting at the kitchen table with printed screenshots, the same ones I'd given Linda, spread out in front of him like evidence in a trial. Danny told me Jenna called her afterward, absolutely shattered. My own parents are taking his side, she said. Danny's response, relayed to me without commentary, was, they're not taking a side, Jenna. They're reading what you wrote. The friend group fractured along predictable lines. Kesha's husband, Damon, called Greg Patterson, and within a week, the couple's dinner circuit had collapsed entirely, not with any dramatic confrontation. People just stopped calling each other. Plans got canceled. A group text about a 4th of July barbecue went unanswered. Meanwhile, I was settling into a routine of the holiday and that I'm not proud of, but was honestly kind of peaceful. I ate continental breakfast every morning. I went to work. I came back and watched whatever game was on. Sharon Voss and I met twice a week to go over financials and paperwork. After 10 days, I found an apartment, 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, in a complex called Briar Creek that was neither fancy nor depressing. It had a balcony that looked out at a parking lot, and beyond that, a little strip of woods. I bought a mattress, a coffee maker, and a desk from a furniture liquidation place. It was the least amount of stuff I'd ever owned, and somehow it felt like enough. Jenna tried one more time. She showed up at my job site. I was on a call with a subcontractor when I saw her car pull into the dirt lot. She got out looking like she'd barely slept and walked toward me, trying for calm and put together, but landing closer to barely holding it together. Can we please just talk? She said. Not through attorneys. Not through your mother-in-law. Just us. I told the subcontractor I'd call him back. 5 minutes, I said. We stood by my truck. The site crew was pretending not to watch. I deleted the chat, she said. I told the girls it was wrong. I've been seeing a new therapist, not Dr. Kaplan. Someone else. I'm doing the work, Mitchell. I believe you. Then why won't you come home? Because the work you're doing isn't for us. It's for you. And it should have started before you needed a reason. She pressed her lips together. So that's it. 6 years and you just walk away? I didn't walk away, Jenna. I walked toward something I should have walked toward a long time ago. Myself. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time and not recognizing what she found. I think in that moment, she realized that the version of me she'd been performing to the punchline, the golden retriever, the guy who always smiled, was gone. And the person standing in front of her was someone she'd never bothered to actually know. I'm sorry, she said. And for the first time, I believed she meant it completely. I know, I said. I'm sorry, too. She drove away. I went back to work. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. It was clean, all things considered. We split assets. I got reimbursed for the down payment differential on the house. Jenna kept the house, and I kept my retirement accounts. Sharon Voss earned her fee, and Jenna's attorney, a guy named Darren something, was professional and didn't try to make it ugly. I think Jenna's parents had a conversation with her about cooperating. I don't know for sure, but the process went smoother than it might have. Here's where everyone ended up. Jenna is still in therapy. Real therapy, from what Linda tells me. She and I don't communicate directly anymore, but Linda calls me every Sunday. Same as always. She told me Jenna has started being honest with herself about some patterns that go back way before our marriage. I hope that's true. I don't wish her harm. I just wish she'd done it while we were still us. Bree and Todd are in couples counseling. Apparently, Todd finding out about the Mitchell files opened up a larger conversation about how Bree treats people, including him. I have no idea if they'll make it. I hope they do for their kids' sake. Leah and Greg, Patterson moved, not because of the group chat, but the timing was interesting. Leah got a job offer in Charlotte, and they took it. I never heard from either of them again. Kesha sent me a message about 2 months after the divorce. Long, thoughtful, genuinely apologetic. She said she'd gone along with the chat because it felt like bonding, and she hadn't stopped to think about what they were actually doing. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness, just wanted me to know she was ashamed. I replied with a short message thanking her for saying it. We don't talk, but I appreciated the honesty. Danny and I are friends. Not whatever Jenna was probably imagining, just friends. She checks in. I check in. We grab coffee every couple weeks at Groundswell, the same place she told me the truth. She's dating someone now, a landscape architect she met through a client. He seems like a good guy. I'm glad for her. As for me, I'm sitting on my balcony right now, looking out at that little strip of woods behind the parking lot. It's nothing special. A few scrubby pines and some overgrown honeysuckle. But there's a cardinal that shows up every morning around 6:30 and sits on the same branch and sings. And I've gotten into the habit of having my coffee out here, just to hear it. My apartment is small. My furniture is secondhand. I haven't been on a date, and I'm not in any rush. I'm cooking meals I actually want to eat, not meals that photograph well for Jenna's social media. I'm reading books I put down years ago. I rejoined a recreational softball league that I quit because it conflicted with the couple's dinner schedule. I am spectacularly mediocre at softball, and I love every minute of it. Last Sunday, Linda and Frank drove up to see my apartment. Linda brought a casserole, and Frank brought a toolbox because the cabinet door in my kitchen was hanging crooked. We fixed it together in about 15 minutes. And then we sat on the balcony, and Linda told me about her garden, and Frank told me about a catfish he almost caught. And nobody made a joke at anyone's expense. When they left, Frank shook my hand at the door and held it for a second longer than usual. "You're a good man, Mitchell," he said. "Don't ever let anybody make you question that." I closed the door and stood in my quiet apartment and thought about all the versions of myself I tried to be for someone who was never going to see me clearly. The steady one, the patient one, the punchline. I'm done being those versions. The version of me that lives here, in this small apartment with the cardinal outside and the bad softball on Wednesdays. That's the real one. What do you think? If you found out your partner was sharing your most vulnerable moments for laughs, would you have left? Or would you have tried to make it work? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your perspective.